Hello and welcome to Government with Dr. Turner. Today we're going to explain the presidential job description. Article 2 of the Constitution establishes a unitary executive, putting executive power in the hands of one president. The president must be at least 35 years old and a natural-born citizen with 14 years of residency in the U.S. The term natural-born has not been defined, nor has it ever been tested in the courts. It was originally meant to prevent foreign influence. The president can only be elected twice, but in some cases could serve up to 10 years. The founders chose to create an executive branch headed by a single individual. They believed that the lack of an executive contributed to the failure of the Articles of Confederation government. But they had to make their case to the states because nobody wanted another king. Alexander Hamilton provides a point-by-point comparison in Federalist No. 69, explaining how the new American president would be different from the King of England. His main argument was that the crown was hereditary and perpetual, while the presidency was chosen through election with a term of 4 years. In Federalist No. 70, Hamilton argued in favor of a single, strong executive leader. He wrote, "Energy in the executive is the leading character in the definition of good government. It is essential to the protection of the community against foreign attacks, to the steady administration of the laws, to the protection of property, to justice, and to the security of liberty." It's interesting to note that Hamilton's first concern was protection against foreign attacks. The 18th century was a turbulent period in world history, and although the colonies had outlasted the British, that did not mean they had the military might to take on additional foes. The founders believed that without national security, life and liberty are threatened and happiness is impossible. James Madison wrote, "Security against foreign danger is one of the primitive objects of civil society. It is an avowed and essential object of the American Union." As Commander-in-Chief, the President serves as the civilian head of the military. The position of Commander-in-Chief makes the President the chief military authority in the United States, with control over the entire Department of Defense. The President is also the head of the nation's intelligence network. The power to declare war is given to both houses of Congress under the Constitution. Presidents have typically refrained from asking Congress to declare war and have instead frequently deployed the military without congressional authorization. American presidents have deployed military force several hundred times in the nation's history. Yet Congress has declared war only 5 times, first against the British in 1812, and most recently against the Axis powers in 1941. It is probably better to think of the president as having war-making power and the Congress as having war-funding power. In 1973, in response to President Nixon's independent actions in Vietnam, Congress passed the War Powers Resolution. It is a congressional resolution indicating that the president can send troops into action abroad only with congressional authorization, or if American troops are already under attack or serious threat. The goal of the War Powers Resolution was to limit the power of the president to commit American troops to military action without authorization from Congress. But presidents generally ignore the War Powers Resolution, claiming inherent executive power to defend the nation and send troops into action. Presidential military power extends to actions within the United States as well. Article 4, Section 4 provides for the national government's protection of the states against invasion and domestic violence. Presidential use of this emergency power is limited to the state's approval. Only in response to a state's request may the president send national troops to restore the public order, although exceptions to this rule may apply. The USA Patriot Act expanded executive power by giving executive agencies the ability to engage in domestic surveillance activities, including electronic surveillance, and by restricting judicial review of such efforts. The President is the U.S. head of state and chief representative in dealings with other nations. In the United States, treaties are negotiated by the President and require a two-thirds approval from the Senate. However, the President's role in foreign policy increased largely because America became more of a world power. In order to get around the need for Senate approval of treaties, many contemporary presidents have made use of executive agreements in foreign affairs. An executive agreement is a deal made by the President with another head of state that does not require Senate approval. In 1937, the Supreme Court ruled that executive agreements are legally binding in the same way that treaties are. Most completed international negotiations, over 90%, end in executive agreements rather than treaties. The President's power to act as chief executive of the federal government comes from the Constitution. Section 3 of Article 1 stipulates that the President should ensure the laws are faithfully executed. An executive order is a rule or regulation issued unilaterally by the President, with the status of a law. Executive orders are often used to enact policy during periods of divided government. Divided government occurs when one party controls the presidency, while the other party controls at least one house of Congress. Executive orders have a long history in the United States and have been used for numerous important governmental policies. Wars and national emergencies usually increase the number of executive orders. However, presidents often use them in peacetime as well. Theoretically, executive orders are directions to bureaucratic agencies on how laws are to be implemented. Signing statements are statements issued when a president signs a bill into law. The statement lays out the President's interpretation of the law. Often this includes some discussion of sections of the law they deem improper or even unconstitutional, and signals that they may not implement those sections. The President has power to grant pardons and amnesties. The President's power to pardon exempts an individual from the consequences of committing a crime. Article 2, Section 2 gives the Chief Executive power to appoint, remove, and supervise all executive officers and appoint all federal judges. Another component of presidential power is executive privilege. This is the claim that confidential communications between a president and close advisors should not be revealed without the consent of the president. This type of secrecy is often used under a claim of national security protection. An effective head of government is expected to work with Congress to pass legislation. Article 1, Section 7, and Article 2, Section 3 give the President the power to participate in the legislative process. Presidents use the State of the Union address to initiate legislative action by proposing agenda items and raising public awareness. The State of the Union report is a constitutional directive which states the President shall from time to time give to Congress information of the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such matters as he shall judge necessary and expedient. The main legislative power that the Constitution grants to the President is the veto. The veto gives the President constitutional power to turn down acts of Congress. The President's veto may be overridden by a two-thirds vote of both houses of Congress, but overriding a veto is difficult. So far in our history, the President has vetoed legislation 2,580 times, and his veto has been overridden only 111 times. The Constitution implemented an electoral college to limit the presidency's power. By indirect election of the President, the framers meant to make the President responsible to state and national legislatures. The framers adopted the Electoral College as a way to insulate the President from the masses. A major assumption that the founders had concerning the Electoral College was that electors would be leading citizens who could be trusted to exercise good judgment. The founders also believed the Electoral College would make sure that no one would become president who was not qualified. Today, we have changed the system for electing the president so much that the Electoral College has lost its original intent. It has very little relevance today, but it weakens the vote of states with large urban populations and increases the power of rural states. According to the U.S. Constitution, if no one candidate receives a majority vote of the Electoral College, the U.S. House of Representatives chooses the president. The Constitution provides for the removal of the president from office. The official constitutional grounds for presidential impeachment are treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. During the constitutional process of dismissing a president from office, a majority of House members must vote to impeach, followed by 2/3 of the members of the Senate voting to remove from office. Let's review. As Commander-in-Chief, the President serves as the civilian head of the military. The President's power to act as Chief Executive of the federal government comes from the Constitution. Section 3 of Article 1 stipulates that the President should ensure the laws are faithfully executed. Most completed international negotiations, over 90%, end in executive agreements rather than treaties. The main legislative power that the Constitution grants to the President is the veto. During the constitutional process of dismissing a president from office, a majority of House members must vote to impeach, followed by 2/3 of the members of the Senate voting to remove from office.